Hey guys, it's Turn at John's Furniture Repair in the shop today, starting a new project. So it's this little table that I've got here, and it's quite a nice little side table that I've got here for a customer. And the problems are that it's super wobbly, and they're actually wanting it painted black. So the finish is in pretty bad condition. It's all crazed and in pretty rough shape, so we're gonna have to strip it down anyways first. So the plan is to get it apart, strip it down, glue it back together, do some sealer coats, and paint it black. So let's get to it. So I'll just show you the finish up close here. This is what I mean by crazed. Some people call it alligator skin. When the finish has dried out, it starts to kind of separate. You can really see it there. And have this really textured look. It's kind of pulling away from each other and no longer a nice even finish. It's kind of pooling up. So it's actually kind of a cool look if you like that, or if that's what you're going for. But what they want for this piece is a nice smooth black finish. All right, so put this thing up here on the workbench. Gonna take out the drawer. Looks like the drawer could use a little bit of work. The runner's kind of riding on some nails. So whenever I see damage on the bottom of the drawer like this, with these grooves dug into the bottom, what I know right away is that there's nails on the inside of the runner. And if you take a look right here, you can see 3 nails sticking out, 1, 2, 3, and they're just cutting away the bottom of that drawer. So I just simply punch these down with a nail punch and cover them with some wax, and that'll solve that problem, and it'll be a lot smoother. We'll give it a little bit of a hit. Well, that was easy. So they've got a dowel going in the top. That's nice. Good. So there's the top. And there's the shelf. And then I'll get my pry bar under here and just gently lift that up. Same on this side. All right. Great, so you can set that aside. You can kind of more clearly see where the nails are here now that we're digging into the bottom of the drawer. And we'll just need to tap those down. I'm actually going to take it apart, probably flip this over so this doesn't have all those grooves in it, and re-glue because it's loose here. This should be glued down. So it'll be a nice new surface for the drawer to slide on. Sometimes it's better if you don't have any nails in something like this, because the wood will eventually wear down and happen again, but I'll sink them fairly deep so it won't matter. Just gonna tap these apart. They're very loose, so it's not gonna be very hard. Okay, so I've got my stripper here. Just gonna soak down a few pieces. The key to stripping a finish off is keeping the stripper wet on the finish. If your stripper is drying too quickly on your surface, it could be the temperature in your room, or sometimes some finishes do soak up quite a bit. But as long as your stripper stays wet on the surface, it can keep working. But as soon as it's dry, it's not doing anything anymore, and sometimes the finish just dries back onto your piece, so that's annoying. So let those sit for a little bit. Maybe get some of these working. I like to put these right in the can and just work half of them at one time. And I just wash the finish off. This is an old shellac, so it'll wash off pretty good, although it will be sticky. So just get those guys soaking on half of them. And we'll just take our scraper and get some of that shellac right off of there. And you may need to do this a couple of times. So I'm just going to soak it right away again and put it aside. Get into these legs now. So I just use my stripper brush actually, and I just start washing the finish down and off the leg. Rinse your brush in your stripper. You don't have to get too particular about this first round. You're just starting to work into that finish. And the end, sometimes you gotta take out. And that's good. You just give it another little bit of soaking, keep it wet, and go on to the next one. Then we're back to these guys. You'll notice it'll come out a lot cleaner this time. But I can still feel a few nibs of that alligator finish. So this will be the last soak. Now there's two methods to removing the stripper when you're finished taking the finish off. One is steel wool. So on flat areas like these ones, I'll show you that method. So you just get the piece of number 1 steel wool, which is the coarsest, and you're going to scrub your piece dry. So this is good for flat surfaces because you don't have to go around anything, and you can kind of work off any little last bits with scrubbing. But with this method, you're still left with the residue of the stripper. So even if you are using this method, you still need to use a methyl hydrate, which is what I'm putting on right now, to neutralize the stripper. And then you just wipe that off with a clean cloth. And there's your piece. It's pretty beautiful wood. So I'll set that aside and do that to these other ones. I'll show you the other method actually. So if you're just going to use the methyl hydrate instead of the steel wool, you just simply wash that rest of whatever's on there and the stripper residue right off your piece. This works if you've got a fairly complicated area to clean off. That's what I'll be using on the legs, of course. The steel wool will remove a little bit more if you have like pieces left, but these stripped up pretty good, so either way works for these pieces. So Same results. For the legs, I'm going to wash them down again with the stripper. Get a better view. So I'm just working all the finish out of the grooves with my brush. Sometimes it builds up the bottom of legs over the years. It seems like it starts to kind of droop off of the piece. So make sure you work the bottom. Just kind of take a look and see if there's any more chunks. When that's good, you'll just take the methyl hydrate again and you'll scrub it pretty good from the top down. Working quick enough that it's not drying too much before you can able to get it all off of there. Which is why it's important to work in smaller areas. See the old finish here and the nice clean leg here. So I'll do that for the rest of the legs and the other half of the legs, and then we'll get to the tops. Okay, so we've got the shelf and the top to deal with. So we're just gonna strip these guys down the same way. And then I'm just gonna pour a little bit of the methyl hydrate, and I'm gonna scrub the whole top and the edges at the same time. Okay, so I've got the tops stripped, so onto the drawer. It's pretty loose, it's got a lot of side-to-side motion, so the joints here and down here need to be re-glued, so let's get this apart. They've got a couple nails here and here. They're already popping out by themselves. I kind of hate drawers that are put together this way. It's not a very sophisticated method, but it's not a very large, bulky piece, and it's not a very large drawer. So it probably worked for a good 100 years before it had any issues. So it comes apart pretty easily. Just be careful not to crack any of this very delicate wood. I'm gonna give it a tap on the inside here. So I'll just show you guys here what I'm looking for when I go around something. So most of these legs have big chunks missing from the carving at the bottom here. So I'm just adding that back in, and I'll have to sand that out later. And they have quite a bit of damage on some of the areas of the legs that were, I find that when pieces are loose, like this one was, oftentimes they kind of go through a little bit harder of a life because they fall over and get kicked around and aren't super stable. So just do some careful putty work. Even though this is getting painted, I don't skimp on repairs, and I use, you know, the same putty I would if I was to refinish it in a wood color. Like I've said before, I seal all of my painted pieces, especially, I mean, most of my painted pieces. Some of them, it doesn't really matter, but if it's, you know, a solid walnut piece, if someone ever wants to take it back to the wood tone, they're not gonna have a hard time because it's gonna be sealed and the paint will just be on top of the sealer coat. If you don't seal your pieces before you paint them, all that paint kind of gets into the grooves and the grain, and such an opaque color is hard to remove if you ever wanted to. So I'm just doing the next generation of refinishers a favor, like so many have done for me. I mean, oftentimes a piece is painted and I'm returning it, and it's just because they didn't want to remove the finish first. When they painted it, they was just, painting was the easy option, so that works for me too. But oftentimes those paint jobs aren't very good. When I paint something, I like to have my finish as nice as if it was a wood finish, refinished from bare wood. Just gonna rub that right into those little, I always find that these open up on the end grain here. And these are the parts of the leg that catch the light, and you want them to be smooth and luxurious looking. You don't want them to be full of little nicks and dents. This is the time in a project to take your time and to find all these little details that will make your end product really awesome. Great. So then I'll set that leg aside. Okay, so let's glue this drawer together. So I'm just gonna get a little bit of glue on these sides here. And I'm gonna start with my drawer bottom, which has to be in before everything. And then we'll get glue onto here. And right in this groove as well. Just to hold it together for a second while I pop these nails in. We got 25 3/4. And almost 26. So I think we need a clamp going this way. Okay, so it's a little off, so I'm just going to bring it over so slightly that way. So we've got 25 7/8. 25 7/8. Perfect.
In this hour, you'll hear 2 young bands nominated at this year's Juno Awards. Coming up later in the show is Oshawa, Ontario-based Dizzy. Their second album, The Sun and Her Scorch, is up for Alternative Album of the Year. But right now, it's Vancouver.
Okay, so this is the bottom of the drawer where these tear-outs were from the nails. You remember this piece had nails sticking out of it, and they dug into this slide. So we're actually going to be installing this the other way. So this is going to run against this so it'll be a nice flat surface, but we also need to repair this surface. So to do that, I'm just going to use epoxy putty just to fill these grooves, because it's harder than the wood around it, and it'll be a great surface for the slide to run up against. So the other little issue this drawer had was there was a big chunk broken out of this top or bottom corner here. So last night I put in some putty in that corner. So I just need to shape that now. Okay, so I've got all the pieces sanded and all the joints drilled out, everything. We're ready to go back together. So I've got my epoxy mix here, and I'm just gonna fill the joints. All right, so just gonna figure out which one goes where. That's the front, so go back there. Okay, so this piece here runs across and sits on these braces, and then it's nailed on each side. So I'm going to put that back on, and I'm going to glue it down. So I get a bit of epoxy on each side. So try to get these nails back in the same spot. Once that dries, that'll be solid. So I can now, I'm going to flip this over so this is on this side instead, and the drawer can ride on this smooth side. So I'll just glue this, and I've marked it with a pencil on the back here and 2 little marks here, so I know exactly where it needs to go. There we go, that's better. And then the same thing here. Good. Hey guys, it's next morning in the shop. Let's get these clamps off. All right. So, no longer has the wobbles. Really nice and sturdy. Everything came together really well. I'm really happy with that. Let's see how the drawer fits in. I'll get you guys a little bit more on the same plane here. So we fixed the bottom of the drawer and sanded that all nice and flat so it can just ride nice and smoothly on this part. And let's see if it still fits after we took it all apart. Did our thing? Yeah, it looks good. Looks like it's a little bit more of a gap on this side than this side. But also it needs to be lifted a little bit. That's not bad though. Not too shabby. So everything's back together with this. We'll give it a little bit of sand just to clean up the clamp marks and stuff like that. And then clear coat and paint it black. So we've got 2 coats of black paint on this guy. I just did it with a gloss because that's what I had in the gun at the moment. So I'm gonna finish it with a satin black so it won't be this shiny. But right now what I wanna do is sand everything down with a 320 paper and smooth it all out for the next round of paint. So let's get to it. The top is pretty grainy, so I kind of want to sand out all of this grainy stuff here. Get it to just quieten up a little bit. I'm not doing a filled finish, but it's a little bit too loud. So I'm just going to sand this down pretty good on this first sand down to leave a lot more lacquer in the grain than on the surface to start flattening out that finish on the top. Because we did do so much sanding there, the grain is really open. So I'm just gonna sand until I can see there aren't a whole lot of shiny low spots down. And I'll show you guys what that looks like. So that if you're sanding something like this and you wanna get a little bit more of a smooth surface on your wood tops, you can see what level you need to go to. And I'm okay if I sand through on this coat. So there you can see it's got a few shiny spots still, but it's mostly flattened out on that surface. So that's what I'm going to be working towards on the whole piece. And sometimes I use a little bit of water mixed with dish soap or a soap of any choice just for a lubricant on my sandpaper if I'm cutting something down pretty heavy. And I might do that on this top just to get it done quickly. Helps if you have a little stiff brush just to clean your sandpaper off once in a while. And I'm going in a circular motion on this finish just to really cut it down quickly across grain. All right, so I got the whole thing sanded with 320 and I went through quite a bit on the top and some edges and areas, and I'm totally fine with that because I'm more concerned with getting the surface flat than I am with keeping color on right now because we're going to be doing more coats of lacquer anyways. So I did a few little wax fills in areas that popped out more when I had the paint and I didn't see it before. These Mohawk sticks that you can get are compatible with lacquer, so I like to keep a whole bunch of these on hand. And it doesn't really matter what color I use under paint, but for other colors it works. So I've got the drawer prepped as well. So now we can get it back in the booth and start hitting it with the satin lacquer. Everything is super nice and smooth and feeling really good, and the top should fill up with lacquer pretty good after a sand like this. right, so the satin lacquer, black lacquer is on this thing. You can see the top is a lot more filled than the first time we did it. But also it's a flatter lacquer, so you're gonna see less. But that's about what I'm going for. So that looks good. I'm gonna sand everything down a lot lighter this time than I did on the first round, and give it another coat, and then it should be done. All right, so I believe this is the final coat. It looks pretty good. Still got some drying to do, and the grain's showing nicely. We have a drawer back in there. It's got a really nice soft sheen. So just got to put the handle back on the drawer and we are done. All right, I've got the little handle here. Definitely needs a little bit of a polish. So I'm going to take my little Scotch-Brite with some Brasso and just hit all these high points and clean this up. Good. And then just wash that off with some methyl hydrate. And dry it. Put that aside. Now you can see those little points of the flower quite nicely. And then we'll do a little suction the same way. As they dry, they're going to get a little bit dull in the recesses where the Brasso kind of dries and has a bit of a whitish mist. So you just need to reseal everything just to give it a nice clarity. I'm just using some lacquer for that. So we'll let that dry and then we'll put it on the drawer. The jewelry of the piece, so pretty. Okay, so we got it on the drawer. There it is. Looking really good with the black on the inside of the recesses of the brass mold and the black on the cabinet. Looks really nice together. Traditional, but somehow kind of funky too. So we've got a beautiful smooth finish. Remember how we fixed these legs and did all that putty work and sanding? They look really beautiful now. They've got their nice little tulip shape. And everything is working properly. The drawer is nicely sliding in and out. And I really like this finish. So we're gonna let it cure, sit here overnight, and let the customer know it's ready to go home. So thanks for joining me on this one, guys. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and check out our other ones to see some more stuff just like it that we do in the shop.